Welcome, Honorable Chairperson of the South African Police Service. Ladies and gentlemen, can we take our seat and settle down so that we can start? There are more chairs in front, so don't. Those who are at the back, let's come forward and fill this chair so that those who come after us are able to arrive without any disruption, to ensure minimal disruption. So let's leave the seats at the back for those who will be arriving after us. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, you are welcome, members of the media, stakeholders, all protocols observed, our library colleagues who are hosting us today in this esteemed historical library, National Library of Parliament. We continue to celebrate the work that this library is doing within the context of the constitutional work that Parliament is undertaking. Why is this chair looking like this? As I welcome the honorable chairpersons of the oversight committees falling under the Peace and Security cluster of Parliament, you are welcome. I was saying that we continue to celebrate by way of conducting our business here in the land, one of the 6 key national libraries of the Republic of South Africa, the Parliament Library, very historical site, very important library within the context of Parliament's fulfillment of its constitutional mandate. I was informed by the chief librarian yesterday that this library will be turning 150 years next year. So, very rich history. For the past over 30 years of our democracy, it has served as an indispensable source of information, of research for the members of Parliament, for the research team of Parliament, for committees, for staff of Parliament, for stakeholders of Parliament in terms of supporting the work and the constitutional work of Parliament. I said previously that when we talk of evidence-based oversight, evidence-based lawmaking, at the heart of that is this great historical information resource that is the Parliament Library of the Parliament of the Republic of South Africa. So we are here because we want to continuously cast the spotlight on this very important building, of the function of this important library, and so that we understand that it is not just here to store books, but it has got a very critical role to play in the continuous democratic transformation of our country. Thank you very much. You are welcome once again, all the attendees here in the physical space, in the Parliament Library, and the stakeholders as well, and the members of the media on the virtual platform. So we'll be engaging with all of you during this process. So today is the turn of the Peace and Security cluster to engage with you. We did say that committees play a critical role in terms of the key three areas of the functions and the mandate of Parliament, which is lawmaking, oversight, and public involvement. So they are the key drivers of those three. And they are what we call the engine that powers the constitutional work of Parliament. So continuous engagement, continuous interaction, not only for information sharing, but also as part of public accountability, because at the end of the day, as much as Parliament is holding the executive and others accountable, Parliament itself and parliamentarians and these committees are themselves accountable to the public, to South Africans. And the media and the stakeholders are a very key part of society that we engage with as part of this accountability. So we are going to have the presentations, brief presentations from the four chairpersons. We've got a very fair representation of this cluster. We've got two chairpersons that are coming from the National Council of Provinces, and we've got two that are coming from the National Assembly. So we're going to start with the Honorable Chair, Phirwana Phala, from the Joint Standing Committee, who is the Chair of the Joint Standing Committee on Defense, and then will be followed by the Honorable Chair of the Select Committee on Security and Justice, Honorable Jane Mananiso, and then will be followed by the Honorable Chair of the Portfolio Committee on Police, Honorable Anne Cameron, and then the last presentation will come from the Honorable Chair of the Portfolio Committee on Defense and Military Veterans, Honorable Dakota Logwete. So they will be dealing with a wide range of issues, of topics that their committees, which are conducting unique oversight work and lawmaking and other functions. They will be briefing you on those matters that are before the committees. Thank you very much. So without any waste of time, I will do that, and then thereafter we'll give you an opportunity to engage with the chairpersons through questions. Honorable Chair Phala, unfortunately we don't have the mic stand for some reason. I don't know. Seems like we didn't procure it today.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Chair of the session, Ndademu Mothapo. Good afternoon, my colleagues, members of the media, and key stakeholders, Parliament officials, and the people of South Africa. Good afternoon. Chair, I'm going to deal with three things here, but I will request that you allow me just to add one more challenge, which we encountered as the oversight, as what we're doing our oversight in the borders. South Africa faces complex security challenges from organized crime, illegal mining to global instability that affects our economy and security environment. In this context, the oversight role of Parliament over the South African National Defence Force becomes more important than ever. Today, I would like to reflect on the work of the committee in ensuring that the South African National Defence Force fulfill its mandate effectively and responsibly. Before that, Chair, allow me to speak about the Middle East conflict. Allow me to condemn the ongoing conflict in the Middle East. The war and aggression are not the solution to disagreements. South Africa's own history has demonstrated that dialogue and engagement remain most effective tool for resolving dispute. The current conflict is not only causing immense humanitarian sufferings, but also carries significant global economic risks. These risks have the potential to negatively affect our emerging countries, including our own countries, South Africa. Chair, the oversight on the South African National Defence Force deployment. The South African National Defence Force deployment has a constitutional responsibility to protect the territorial integrity and sovereignty of our country. At times, it is also required to support internal security efforts when circumstances demand it. For this reason, the committee welcomed the decision by the President to deploy the South African National Defence Force to support the SAPS in combating illegal mining and the rise in gang-related violence. The SANDF is a capable and a professional force, and the deployment must be understood within that context. However, as legislators, our responsibility goes beyond simply welcoming such announcement. Our role is to ensure that deployments are implemented effectively, responsibly, and within the framework of the law. When the SANDF first briefed the committee, we raised concern regarding the lack of clarity and alignment between the operational plans of the SANDF and the SAPS. These concerns included issues around command and control structures, the preparedness of the SANDF members to operate in civilian environment, and delays in implementing the presidential directive. We are therefore pleased that these matters have since been clarified, and that there's now greater coordination and cooperation between the SANDF and the SAPS. South Africa is facing serious criminal challenges that requires coordinated action from all sectors of government. The SANDF deployment serves as an important force multiplier in this effort. However, it is equally important that clear exit strategies are developed and that long-term response to crime also includes stronger socio-economic intervention. I'll move to the second point, Chair. The National Convention Arms Control Committee and Defense Industry. The committee is also concerned about the infrequent meetings of the National Conventional Arms Control Committee, the body which is responsible for safeguarding the export and import and trade of conventional arms. The limited functioning of the NCACC, and combined with challenges within the Directorate for Conventional Arms Control, risk undermining the growth and potential of South African defense industry. Globally, defense spending has increased significantly in recent years. These present opportunities for South Africa's defense sector to grow, create jobs, and contribute to the economy. However, these opportunities can only be realized if regulatory institutions function effectively and efficiently. The NCACC has a crucial responsibility to ensure that South African defense companies operate responsibly, they comply with international law, and meet the requirement of this National Conventional Arms Control Act. Equally important is a need for transparency, including tabling of reports to Parliament to ensure proper oversight of arms trade activities. The defense industry plays an important socio-economic role in our country, and it is essential that all stakeholders work together to remove obstacles that hinder both industry and the SANDF from performing effectively. Chair, if you allow me, as I requested, I will quickly move into the fourth item, which I wanted to speak about here, which is very critical. The issue, Chair, is is a challenge of migration and illegal settlements along the South African borders. The illegal settlements along South African borders are enablers of cross-border crime and insecurity. The Parliament Joint Standing Committee undertook an oversight visit to Limpopo from the 13th to the 17th of October 2025 to assess conditions at various military bases and deployment areas. This included a visit to the border areas surrounding the Beitbridge border. The committee visited several illegal crossing points, including the village called Hachurunti. Hachurunti village constitutes an illegal land occupation and is reported to be a nodal point for cross-border crime. This crossing point presents similar challenges with undocumented migrant crossing with relative ease, particularly during the dry season when the Limpopo river flow is low. Smugglers involve cross-border criminal activities and make use of rafts and donkey crafts to transport people and illicit goods across
the Western Cape and Gauteng. And Northwest. The deployment will ensure the restoration of peace to troubled and violated communities. As you would know, honorable journalists and media houses, I come from Randfontein in the Rand West, where Sporong is located. So I'm one of the beneficiaries who is here, who have benefited on this particular deployment. Our police have for too long become victims to criminals while they needed to observe legislative requirements. Instead of dealing aggressively with criminals, we have no regards whatsoever for other people's human rights. We want to restore peace in our communities, and we want decisive action on drugs and those that facilitate the scourge. The committee has emphasized the importance of cooperation, collaboration, and partnership of all law enforcement agencies, including community policing forum, to combat crime and to bring peace to our communities. And we will continue to oversee the deployment of SANDF in all the provinces. As you would know that as the NCOP, we are responsible for all 9 provinces. So each member in our committee will ensure that they bring issues that they are seeing on the ground into our oversight meetings to just check and trace whether this deployment is effective and it's responding to the issue at hand. On the issue of gang violence directly affects our children who are recruited by gang members and due to gang violence are unable to attend school and often become addicted to drugs, and this is devastating to their families. Gang violence requires a multi-sectoral approach involving communities and law enforcement agencies and the SANDF as they are deployed to address this scourge of violence head-on and to ensure that our communities are safe. To this end, we will ensure that through our oversight visits and engagement with SAPS and the SANDF through their annual performance plans and budget, that the initiative is set up to dismantle gangsterism and restore families. We encourage the SANDF and SAPS to work together to rid our communities of these criminal syndicates. We also encourage the police to work hand in hand with the National Prosecuting Authority to ensure that these syndicates are successfully prosecuted and convicted. We now know that indeed dealing with crime and safer communities is a societal responsibility. Our emphasis as well is about communities who are on the ground, who can see and report, because we know there's a line that is launched to actually make the law enforcement agencies alert of what is happening on the ground. So on this matter, we would want everybody to be part and take charge and don't look away as you see these activities happening. In terms of the extent of gun violence, firearms remain the dominant weapon in murder, with 2,561 incidents reported in the crime statistics Q3 of 2025-2026. Firearms account for 40% of all murders in this quarter. Firearms-related murders are particularly concentrated in Gauteng, 668. You would know Gauteng is one of the attractive provinces from those who are vulnerable from their other societies, and as well, it's where everybody gets to be, involved in so many activities that are illegal. Western Cape, it's 644, and KwaZulu-Natal, it's 612. We need SAPS to do more in respect of removing and destroying illegal firearms, because every illegal firearms removed from our communities reduces the chances of murder, robbery, gender-based violence, and femicide violence. Communities themselves also have a role to play in reporting and handing illegal firearms over to the police. Given the high number of illegal firearms in circulation, we welcome the President's announcements to tackle gun crime by streamlining legislation and regulations on licensing, processing and trading in firearms and ammunition, and by increasing the enforcement of existing gun laws. All efforts to fight organized crime gangsterism, and ownership of illegal firearms. It requires a proper legislative and regulatory framework, as well as sufficient resources and skills to effectively fight crime of this nature. The committee will be responsible to the needs of the citizens in the provinces we serve by ensuring oversight, accountability over all the departments within the Justice and Crime Prevention Cluster to ensure that safety and trust is restored in all the communities we serve. In conclusion, community public policing is for all, and law enforcement is for those who are deployed or are working as law enforcement agencies. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair. Yeah, no, today I'm dealing with different types of cluster because I don't know whether it's because of their relationship with the military, because, you know, as they say, they execute things with military precision. Thank you very much. And I think there are a lot of things on the side of the NCOP in particular, because the nature of those committees, you must understand, they are sort of operate like a cluster. So unlike in the National Assembly where one committee deals with one department, in the NCOP, one oversight committee, select committee can deal with up to 4 or 5, sometimes 7, yeah, up to 7 departments. So there are a lot of issues that, and I appreciate that you were able to execute all of them with that kind of precision. Going on now to the National Assembly, the Honorable Chairperson of the Portfolio Committee on Police, Honorable Cameron.
Thank you. I must say it is military precision in terms of timing today. I don't know if I should be intimidated by all the SANDF related people sitting behind me. I must be very careful with what I say and what I don't say. Let's say it's collaboration. It's a very good way of saying it. Yes, yes. I would like to start by first of all obviously thanking you for the opportunity to speak. There are 3 or 4 very specific things that I'm going to touch on today. First of all, we all know that South Africans in general are increasingly anxious about their safety. There's no doubt about it. Last week, I was doing a walkabout with law enforcement officers in Dunoon, and it was astounding to just hear more stories once again, not new stories, but more stories about how extortionists literally hold entire streets ransom or hostage. And that is the reality that so many people face on ground level. I want to first start with the SANDF deployment. The deployment of the South African National Defence Force, I believe, may really provide the necessary force multiplier and visibility to quell violence in the short and possibly the medium term. I must, however, say, and say it very clearly, that a military deployment is not a long-term solution. We must all understand that this has the risk of being a plaster being stuck on a wound that needs surgery. And we need to make sure that we understand that very, very clearly. The mandates differ significantly. Training differs significantly. An example I want to use, actually that I received from Randfontein this morning, was how soldiers and police are already not getting along too well because allegedly in Randfontein, some of the generators that were seized from illegal mining operations there were more generators seized, but when they received the report afterwards, less were indicated. So then I start wondering, where is the decent command and control of these operations? So that's point number 1 again in terms of the whole command and control issue, but I'll touch on that again later. Recently, we saw the tragic killing of Ashton Brooks in Seawinds. He's a 13-year-old boy who was shot and killed while playing soccer with his friends in January. And it reminds us how many people become statistics, but we sometimes forget to say the name. Every time we have this briefing, I feel like I repeat a lot of names, but just yesterday again, last night, another 2 children were shot in the Cape Flats close to Elsie's River. His family, this is Ashton, and many others like him deserve more than just temporary interventions or plasters on wounds that need surgery. They deserve long-term, sustainable solutions that will allow children to play freely in their communities without fearing for their lives. The deployment of the SANDF also raises questions about earlier assurances by specifically the Western Cape Provincial Commissioner, General Thembisile Patekile, that the South African Police Service had the capacity to deal with gang violence in the Cape Flats. It's clear at the moment that they do not have that capacity. When speaking to ground-level members this morning and yesterday morning from several units, including the whole operational response service element in the Western Cape, on ground level, there has been no indication to them of how their cooperation would work. I have, although, been informed that such joint training would soon begin. Before we discuss the solutions, I also need to address the troubling manner in which some of the deployment unfolded. The lethargic and poorly coordinated handling of the pre-deployment phase by senior management within the South African Police Service and the South African National Defence Force is deeply concerning. Now, I say this because I think that, and I want to compliment my fellow chairpersons around me, everyone made really positive input on how this force multiplier effort can work so well. I believe that if each one acts within their mandate and they are able to really complement each other, and you've got specialized units in the South African Police Service along with jointly trained soldiers that can work together for a short period of time with intelligence-driven and prosecution-led operations, they really can remove kingpins. They can remove large amounts of firearms, drugs, etc. from some of these communities. But the haphazard way in which we saw some of these search and seizure operations going wasn't one that indicated the precision that has already been illustrated by my fellow chairs with their time management this morning. I must then say, while the Constitution empowers the President to deploy the SANDF in support of the SAPS, that authority must always be accompanied by the necessary transparency and accountability to Parliament. And last night at the ad hoc committee, I actually asked Lieutenant General Mkhwanazi, I said to him, but General, often it is said that Parliament doesn't act in terms of oversight. But in terms of this specific deployment, Parliament made incredibly valuable contributions of how this can be positively done. And despite those contributions that were made, very little or none of those contributions were considered at all before the deployment. So I hope that changes. Then, the President announced the deployment on the 12th of February, yet the letter informing Parliament was only tabled on the 13th of March. This delay created an oversight vacuum that undermines the spirit of constitutional accountability, and it also suggests that the security cluster is not being coordinated amongst each other successfully. Just yesterday, the poor soldiers that did an operation on illegal mining in Randfontein had to wait 2 hours for police members to arrive to assist with suspects that were arrested. It cannot be that way. These are meant to be joint operations. Although the letter has now been tabled, the Portfolio Committee on Police is still waiting to receive a detailed and integrated operational plan. I'm not asking for a tactical plan. I'm trying to understand how the joint operation would work. One of the easy excuses is often, no, we can't share operational details. We don't want tactical details. I'm not interested in that. We want to make sure that the coordination is done properly. The letter has been tabled. Critical questions still remain unanswered, including the operational framework that guide the deployment. We still don't have an indication of command and control structures, accountability mechanisms, how success will be measured, joint training for the members, and that the soldiers that were deployed already seemed not to have joint training with the SAPS. These are not minor details, in my opinion, that we can just ignore. They go to the heart of how force is exercised in a democratic country. We cannot allow for a constitutional democracy to haphazardly deploy soldiers to the streets. In terms of taxi violence, the committee is also deeply concerned about the continued violence in Cape Town, particularly violence linked to the taxi industry. You will have seen just this week in Delft yet another double murder regarding taxis. And not too long ago, there was the deeply concerning murder of a 14-year-old girl outside a school in Atlantis. And it was really horrific. I must add this on a personal level. I visited the school to meet with some of the family after the incident had happened. And it's almost as though even some of the children have been exposed to so much violence that many people have become desensitized and others really struggle with trauma. So we need to make sure we don't just see these horrific crimes as numbers, because they certainly are not. These incidents are obviously tragic, but we need to go look at the deeper structural problems that require urgent attention. And one such concern is the presence of police officers who own taxis. You would have noticed over the last 2 weeks, we went through a process that slowly, every day, every few hours, we expose yet another police member that owns taxis. Now, SAPS has sat on those names for over 20 months and did nothing. It cannot be that we allow that to haphazardly pass. We have now taken it up with the National Commissioner as well as the ad hoc committee, and I hope that we will now see some kind of action regarding that, and those are only the ones we know of in the Western Cape. The practice directly contradicts the SAPS regulatory framework, including Section 46 of the SAPS Act, that's more with regards to political affiliation, and then Section 13 of the National Land Transport Act. It raises concerns, and firstly, is SAPS aware of members who are engaged in remunerative work outside the service, and if not, why not? And how widespread is this practice? Because I can tell you that every time I exposed another one, we received another 2 or 3 to say, here's another name, another rank, another unit, investigate that. In fact, one of the members yesterday sent me a message from the anti-gang unit in Cape Town, where a sergeant recently promoted not only is involved in the taxi industry, but also in the tow truck industry. So obviously that would need attention. Then the private security industry regulatory authority, CIRA, appears unable to enforce compliance effectively, largely due to limited capacity to monitor, inspect security companies. And if taxi violence is to be addressed meaningfully, we must confront not only the symptoms, but the structural drivers of the conflict. And I say this because often we see rogue security firms involved in this, but this, while the very CEO and CFO of the private security regulator are both accused of significant corruption over many years that the past 3 police ministers have all known about, but still haven't taken any action. We are actually at a deadlock at the moment with the Police Portfolio Committee, where we have said we cannot welcome CIRA to the committee again until there has been action taken against the CEO and the CFO of CIRA because of millions of rands of UIF money that was stolen during specific projects. And then, almost in closing, just in terms of the crime statistics, very briefly, on the 20th of February, the Acting Minister of Police released the third quarter crime stats. And while there have been some decreases, which was always be welcomed, in certain categories of violent crime, the committee remains firmly of the view that crime levels in South Africa are obviously unacceptably high. The SAPS continues to present intervention plans. However, these plans often fail to demonstrate or impact what South Africans expect. A good example is Operation Chanela, where hundreds of thousands of arrests are made, but a tiny percentage of them actually result in some kind of conviction. So it pressures the system, high-level, low-quality arrest without any real conviction. We need a fundamental shift in our policing strategy, and it must include stronger, more effective efforts to not only remove illegal firearms, as the previous chairperson correctly indicated, but it will remain ineffective if individuals arrested during the operations like Chanela are not successfully prosecuted. And there's also no need for us to continuously just make low-level foot soldier arrests. We need the South African Revenue Service to play their part to also help us to tackle the kingpins, the people actually supplying these criminal organizations of the tools that they are using. On gender-based violence, the committee remains deeply concerned about the report of insufficient rape kits, something that we have previously highlighted and will continue to do at certain police stations, and it was confirmed when we started doing unannounced oversight visits at some of these stations. We even went to the Epping store supply chain store and found that the shelves were virtually empty. It cannot be that with gender-based violence being declared a national disaster by the president, it is not taken seriously on ground level. And then in closing, the impact of the ad hoc committee. The urgency surrounding the ad hoc committee investigating allegations made by Lieutenant General Nkosazana has unfortunately affected the work of the Portfolio Committee on Police, because several members of the Portfolio Committee on Police had been serving and will still continue for a short while to serve on the ad hoc committee, and important work had obviously had to be deferred. This includes processing the National Assembly resolution to conduct an inquiry into gang violence in the Western Cape, the consideration of committee's annual reports, and also the report on the statutory rape inquiry. However, the work as assurance has not been abandoned, and as the lifespan of the ad hoc now comes to a close, the Portfolio Committee on Police will begin the second term with renewed focus to ensure that transparency, accountability, and effectiveness within policing can continue. In closing, both the ad hoc committee process and the Madlanga Commission of Inquiry have exposed serious challenges within the justice, crime prevention, and security cluster. These processes are necessary to uncover the truth about the state of policing in the country. But uncovering the truth is not enough. We need to make sure, as South Africans expect, and what they deserve, is that decisive action and real consequences are actually taken. Without accountability, without reform, and without action, the credibility of the SAPS and the entire security cluster will remain in question. I want to close by telling you that we have mentioned so many times, and we had this example with General Nkosazana last night. We mentioned the likes of General Tio, the previous crime intelligence head in the Western Cape, where we had to fight twice that he had to be removed because of dubious activities. Lieutenant General Patrick Mboto in the DPCI, same thing. Major General Khan in the crime intelligence environment, same thing. We've redlined these things, we've brought it up with every single minister, we've written to every commissioner, the DPCI judge, etc., but action is lacking. So we have to get to a point where even from our side, like with Sarah, we have to push for a deadlock to say we cannot accommodate those that seem or are allegedly corrupt, because it is a risk to not only our credibility, but a further risk to security of the country. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair. I see that you had 3 sections of closing, almost closing and further closing. No, but I appreciate that there's quite a lot of things to deal with in that area. Thank you very much for that comprehensive presentation, Chair. The last presentation from the Portfolio Committee on Defense and Military Veterans, Honorable Chair Lekgotse.
Thank you very much, Program Director. Let me also write on the protocol, as observed by the chairperson of the session. I would normally start where we start. State exists for 3 priorities. The first priority is to feed your people. The second priority is to develop your people. The third priority is to defend your people. Now, defense and security, it's one of the state governance priorities, because without these 3, any state loses its legitimacy and it becomes a problem. Now, in our country, we are at a point where we need to realize that peace is not permanent. For the first time since the Second World War, the whole global geopolitics have turned on 2 things, on peace and stability. And I think also as the nation, we are duty-bound to prepare for eventuality of any attack to our sovereignty or to our people or to our republic. So it's incumbent upon us to do that. The same case goes with the challenge we have of criminality and the criminal element in our republic. The criminal element has went to an extent that it has undermined the sovereignty of a duly elected government, which is housed in this parliament where we are, to an extent that over 26,000 South Africans die every year in the hands of the criminal element. Fellow Honorable Member Cameron stated that even kids were killed yesterday here in the Cape Town. Now, 26,000 means 80 people die every day in the hands of the criminal element. Now, that is more numbers than the numbers of the war-torn zone like Gaza, like Ukraine, now like Iran and other parts of the world and the continent. 26,000, it's a lot. Now, because we sometimes miss the point of being victim-centric, we talk on behalf of the rights of the perpetrators, the criminal element, and the convicted. We forget that 26,000 people have ceased to exist and to live. Now, it's a serious matter for concern. We know the criminal element. We've got intelligence reports that we need to work on. So it's a matter that we need to show. But again, we need to be patriots. We need to love our country and our fellow citizens and our fellow human beings, because we are just sometimes casual and timid with what we are confronting. And the same call that we are making to all parliamentarians to understand, yeah, it's about our national interest. It's not even about party politics. The country is under threat. The national security is under threat. We need to know how to respond for the benefit of all of us and the future of our children. We know that there are illicit substances which poses a threat to the future of our children. It means going forward, we'll not have to build universities. We'll have to build drug rehabilitation centers, because a whole generation is under a threat of being wiped off by the criminal element. Now, time for dilly-dallying, time for blaming, it's over. We have a common enemy, and we are all under a common threat. We need to respond to that particular situation we are confronting. That's why we, as the Portfolio Committee on Defense, we support the President initiative to bring the South African National Defense Force and the South African, to collaborate and cooperate with the South African police services in fighting crime. Because when 26,000 people die in the hands of the criminal element, that's a low-key civil war. Only in a civil war or in a full-blown war, such numbers of people can lose their lives. But in our case, we have nothing of a war or a civil war, but we have a loss of over 26,000 lives. Now, it's not a thing you can leave to the police alone. The army needs to come in, because some of these criminals use high-caliber weapons. They use automatic rifles, and some of the gap of how they got this, including gangs, how they got this high-caliber weapon, it's because some of them have got the security companies. SIRA is not inspecting enough to check who owns a security company, because even convicted criminals in our country owns security companies. You ask yourself, who vetted them? Who gave them that security license? And now such people, because they've got security license, they have access to buy guns. And some of these guns don't end up in a security company. They end up in the street committing crime, extortions, demanding protection fee against our people. And it has become such a problem that some of us are comfortable here, because either we are guarded by SAPS, we can afford in our estates, we've got high walls, we've got security walls. But what about somebody who stays in Khayelitsha, who has to pay a protection fee to an extortionist, while the same person is paying South African Revenue Services to pay me as a parliamentarian, to pay a soldier, to pay a police, to pay an intelligence officer? There's double dipping on our society, and it's unfair. It cannot continue. That's why, as the Portfolio Committee, we support the President. But again, it's in the laws of the Republic, in Section 201, subsection 2, that the prerogative of deploying the Defence Force with the South African Police Services lies with the executive and the head of the executive, which is the president. So we will not want to obstruct. What we will do as the portfolio committee, it's what section 201, subsection 3 says. Tell us the reasons, the location, the personnel involved, the cost, and the duration of the operation. That's what the law requires from us, even to play oversight in ensuring that resources are spent wisely and to the benefit of this. And again, the mandate to deploy the National Defence Force, it's clearly defined in section 200 of the Constitution, subsection 2, that the National Defence Force is responsible for the territorial integrity of the country, is responsible for defending the sovereignty, defending the Republic, its people, upholding the Constitution, and all international laws. So in our case, an encounter with any other defense or security agency in the state, we are the last line of defense, according to this provision of section 200. Now the country is under threat. 26,000 people die. It's not a child's play or something you can play around with. It's something that needs force and a force multiplier to ensure that we defend our people against the criminality, because people are living in fear. South Africans are afraid. They sleep at 6 o'clock in the evening because you can't walk the streets. You can't even walk the streets once it gets dark. What type of a republic or a country is that? We cannot continue that. And that's why we would want to support this. But we are saying the defense intervention must not be for a long term. We met with academics in this sector. We have agreed with them after a long deliberations as a portfolio committee. We called experts from military academies, University of Stellenbosch, University of Free State, and other universities to deal with this thing, military sociologists, psychologists, economists, and other people, just to deal with this thing. One of the things we agreed is that it must not be for a long term, because we don't want to place the country under a military dictatorship, because we have an elected leadership here that must ensure that the country runs. Secondly is that we need to bring in jack up our intelligence. Where possible, we need a fusion center where we can house artificial intelligence, cyber security capacity, even the defense intelligence and the crime intelligence must collaborate. By that fusion center, it means that through artificial intelligence, I must be able to report a station commander who collaborates with these people, an official of Home Affairs who sells citizenships, so that we report them to the artificial intelligence center. Instead of a whistleblower being killed, you will be talking to the fusion center, artificial intelligence center, to robots, so that we save your life in case it's reported that it's you who reported on that particular situation in your area. So those are some of the things that to check up this particular project in the long term and to find a permanent solution, we need to bring technology in the fight against crime. Because if you have a fusion center with cybersecurity capacity and artificial intelligence, we can even through crime intelligence tech and identify all the criminal elements and kingpins throughout the country, follow them through an intelligence-driven process, get them. We also need the multidisciplinary capacity of both the SAPS, the SNDF, the South African Revenue Services, the Border Management Authority, Department of Social Development, Department of Home Affairs, and the Department of Labor. The reason why we are saying all this department needs to come in as the Portfolio Committee of Defense is because we want a permanent solution. We want the army to come in to stabilize, but after that, as we are stabilizing, SARS must be in. Gangster economy and gangster recruitment, some of them are rich, they can't explain their wealth. If SARS is there, we do a tax review on the spot, lifestyle audit, that kill that kingpin, including how he created his wealth. The same goes with illegal mining. You find a person with millions that they can't account to. SARS must take that person for tax review. Border management must be there. If this person was undocumented or came illegally here, Department of Home Affairs gets in to ensure that we register that person, we declare that person undesirable, and we deport them within 48 hours. The law allows us. But that would need also DERCO to come in so that we brief some of the neighboring countries in terms of what the conduct of some of their citizens and what we're going to do, so that nobody must say we are xenophobic. We are implementing and enforcing the laws of the Republic. Because some of us here, as honorable members, we have taken that particular oath to ensure that we do all these things. Social development will be in to deal with psychosocial support. Department of Labor must be there to help us with the skills fund to ensure that we build artisanal skills on some of these people who are committing crimes, who are recruited by gangsters, so that we kill that particular economy. Also kill the networks of illegal mining and illicit substances and contrabands that are easily found in our country. But that must also be included is the Border Management Authority to ensure that if citizens of other countries are doing these things in our country to destroy the future of our children, we must not be afraid. Deport them. Because we declare them undesirable and deport them. It's there. It's a law of the country. It needs to be enforced, including what the Bill of Rights says under Section 21, subsection 3, that the rights of residents in this country, it's only for citizens. Why should we be made to account when the Constitution is very clear? Even the police and the defense force, they must deal with this thing. It's there, fully guaranteed in the Bill of Rights. We can't be dilly-dallying and saying, even going to an extent that undocumented people qualify for road accident fund, when the Constitution is clear that the right of residents, it's only for citizens. So these are some of the things we need to ensure that we check up. But the law enforcement lies with the South African Police Services. We are there as the National Defense Force to intervene, to deal with the gang economy, to deal with the dismantle illegal mining networks. So those are some of the things we need to be there to ensure that we deal with them and deal with them permanently. Because any country that cannot defend its people does not deserve legitimacy. And we are reaching that point that we lose over 26,000 people. If you are to count, I know people complain about what goes into the deployment of the National Defense Force. But if we were to calculate that one burial of one person out of the 26,000 cost us 100,000 rand, from insurance claims to burial society claims to everything, 100,000 multiplied by 26,000, that's 2.6 billion rand. Now, in some of our deployments, we don't even need R1 billion to deal and stabilize these things, because any economy that cannot defend its investment, its people, its asset, it will not get new investment, because security is the reason why other economies in the world are thriving. And in our case as South Africa, if we want to increase jobs, if we want economic growth, we need also to deal with the issue of defense, because defense and security is not a luxury. It's one of the priorities of state governance, which we are mentioning here. And it needs to be understood that that's the way life goes. No defense and security, no peace and stability, and no safety of ordinary citizens. So we cannot continue double-dipping on our people and misrepresenting them or mismanaging institutions. I thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Honorable Chair. The issues, as colleagues will appreciate, there are many, and they are very important. As the chairperson says, they go to the heart of prosperity of a nation, economic growth, job creation. Those are very important issues that have been dealt with, issues of peace, safety, security, and stability. Very important. So I thank you, Honorable Chairpersons, from both Houses of Parliament, the National Assembly, and the National Council of Provinces. So there will be a roving mic. It's being prepared. I can imagine that there will be quite a number of questions. So I'm going to ask, because we have got the sitting of the National Assembly. I'm not sure about the NCOP. The NCOP as well is sitting at 2, so both sittings that are taking place. And we need to release the members of the media to go and cover both houses make their way there, and also allow the chairpersons as well to be there. So that is a very important business of the Parliament. We can interfere with that. So I'll ask that you ask questions, straightforward questions. We'll take one round, and then they will give all the chairpersons opportunity to respond, and then we close. Starting on the physical platform, I'm just going to give you your numbers, and then you follow each other accordingly. And just mention your organization or a house. So I know there's a temptation to give a speech and input, but I just want us to deal with the issues of clarity, seeking questions. So if we can just be straightforward. You'll be the first, and I will be the second, you'll be the third, you'll be the fourth, you'll be the fifth, you'll be the sixth on the physical platform. And then we'll go to the virtual platform afterwards. In that order, thank you.
Hi, Theonin from Independent Media. Just to start, has the cluster sort of been satisfied with the explanation from both SAPS and the SANDF on how the deployment is going to be, and how different or improved will it be from previous deployments? And then secondly, is the committee's keeping an eye on the criminal elements within SAPS, given how often illegal guns are moved from not only just police stations, but also how much of an impact it has on gang activity as well? Thank you.
Thank you, Matthew.
Good afternoon, Matthew, freelance journalist for Ground Up News. This is for the chair of the Standing Committee on Defence. 2 weeks ago, SANDF briefed the committee on the deployment, but they were told, or it was a suggestion that they should come back jointly with SAPS. Is that still going to happen? And if so, when is that going to happen? Because there's been some sort of concern that SAPS and SANDF are speaking past each other on some issues, and what are your thoughts on that? And then also just for the chairperson on police, Mr. Cameron, this is about you mentioned about the prosecutions. That's obviously quite a big issue. So what kind of measures would you recommend to solve that? Because obviously that's something that both local government and national government has spoken about. So your thoughts on that? Thanks.
Thank you, Matthew.
Thank you. My name is Mkokile Bandla. I'm for the SABC News. My question is going to be directed to the chairperson of the Portfolio Committee on Police, Mr. Ian Cameron. In light of the allegations by KZN Police Commissioner Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi, will the Portfolio Committee on Police accept the challenge to investigate the continued non- or partial occupation of the Telkom Towers police headquarters, despite the state reportedly spending around 1.5 billion on its purchase, and what accountability measures will follow if there are any irregularities that would be found around that? And maybe this second question will be posed to maybe the NCOP or the National Assembly, but you will see who takes it. With the seemingly increasing reliance on the military support on policing, and questions being raised about institutional weaknesses, is the SANDF deployment addressing crime or masking deeper failures within the South African Police Service, as some critics in the sector have opined? Thank you.
Thank you, Mkokele. 4.
Thank you very much. My name is Sean Tate. I'm from an NGO called APCOF. 2 questions. The one is, in the COVID-19 deployment SANDF, and we look back at the COSA death and the judgments that came out of that, the court ordered SANDF to develop a code of conduct for mission-specific deployment. In this deployment and the operational plans that are being requested from SAPS and SANDF, will a code of conduct also be part of that agenda? And certainly we look for something slightly more robust than what was produced in 2020. And then secondly, looking at the Portfolio Committee of Police agenda and understanding the challenges on capacity based on the participation in the ad hoc committee, but looking at that agenda, will the amendment to the SAPS Act and then the long outstanding amendment bill to the SIRA Act, I mean, are these things that the committee thinks or has the appetite of bringing back into the process now, given these developments? Thank you.
Thank you, Sean. The last hand was at the back. I think the last one. Okay, no, not the last one, the fifth one. I think I identified
Thank you,
six.
Chair.
Yeah.
I'm a little bit short. I don't know
Yeah.
when I ask
No,
myself to sit.
It's fun.
No, I like to stand. Thank
We're
you.
interested in your voice mostly, but
My name is Enoch de Bruin. I'm a veteran from the old, what is it? One is a kaka from Easter Rivier. But us is left behind. And there was no like input from the government to include us to give them advice. Just a brief, I belong to two organizations. One organization is Knaven. They sit this weekend to discuss the way forward. I went to Kapa Forte and applied, and I give them my credentials. And I said to them, sorry to use it, and I gave my force number. I said, I was a recce. They look at me, what is that all about? And I explained to them, that's the work of a recce. And for me, personally, I see the chairperson there in the corner was explaining to us, and I feel so excluded from everything. And none of us, we had force numbers, none of us qualify for medical aid and pension. What is the way forward for us, the former soldiers from one Isakaka in Easter Rivier? Thank you, Chair.
thank you very much. That relates to the issues of military veterans, which is part of area covered by Honorable Lochete and yeah.
Good afternoon. Thank you for the opportunity to be here. My name is Dr. Anne Welcher. I'm a doctor of sociology and director of Cohere Solutions. We've talked very much about multifaceted approaches and the future of our children, and then looking at the Bill of Rights as well. Ultimately, the first in the Bill of Rights, the primary, is our children. What I haven't heard here is we're looking at the structural problems and wanting sustainable long-term solutions. Have we thought about the fact that the synchronicity between that didn't occur in the transformation when we prohibited child labor, we didn't fill the gap after school with where they would have gone to employment. So we're sitting at a base where adults are employed for 50 hours a week, or 75 with overtime for farm workers, but children are going to school for 25 hours a week, or less if you're younger. So this is a structural misalignment where we've got children neglected in homes for about 30 to 50 hours a week. And it's not for a parent's fault, or the community can help, but ultimately it's something that government needs to look at structurally, which talks to the recruitment into gangs and violence against children. So I would thinking about that as a long-term sustainable solution. Furthermore, with regards to legal and illegal firearms, we spoke about the required resources today, but there was no mention made of the existing systems in place that at our police stations, our computer systems and firearms going missing from there as well. Are we doing anything to put those measures in place so that we can protect our women and children at home without already having those who cannot rely on private security and such forth? Thank you.
Okay.
Those are the
Thank you very much, Dr. Arnold. From the virtual platform, do we have any hands? There are no hands. Okay. Okay. No, thank you very much. If there are any messages, we will look at them later. Honorable Chairpersons, those are the questions. I know that certain questions have got name tags on them. Yeah. Yes. No. Yeah. I was saying that the others were general that should be any chairperson can deal with. Honorable Mananiso wants to. Yes. Start first. Yes.
No, thank you, Mr. Mutapo, and let me welcome all the questions. And some of the question, I think it's one of the suggestions that we normally put as the select committee in terms of multifaceted approach. Because what you are saying, Doctor, it's a true reflection of what we deal with. People still working in silos, yet they just need to integrate, cooperate, partner with each other so that we respond entirely to criminal system that we know that it's been just haphazard. So it is one of the things that we are enforcing on, that we must work as a uniformed institution when we deal with peace and stability in our country. And I want to emphasize that the National Special Plan that speaks about the gender-based violence and femicide issues, it is very clear that everybody, every department has their space in terms of dealing with issues of crime in our society. But perhaps what we need to do as the collective is to try to check if the content that we were speaking about before the national disaster of the GBVF being declared, is it relevant to respond to issues that we are dealing with? If not, where can we change so that we are becoming responsive in terms of what we want to address as government? And I want to answer as well on the question raised by independent media about responses that we get with regards to SANDF deployment and partnership with SAPS. One would say that if you can check in different societies, those that have been interviewed since this announcement, there's different posture and responses in terms of how they welcome this issue. There are matters just of emphasis to say, for instance, people of Eldos, they are saying they welcome the intervention. However, they want to suggest that let this intervention not be only about the deployment for crime issues, but let the government of provinces look at issues of employment, job opportunities, and as well as psychosocial support. So as committees, that's what we would need to follow through. To say, as we've got this deployment, is it healing results? Are people supposed to be helped after going through the trauma, getting assistance from those departments that need to deal with the aftermath? So that's what we can follow through as the portfolio committees, just to check on the responsiveness of this partnership and deployment. And to SABC, your question was thought-provoking, and I know that you know the answer, that the intervention of SANDF has never been for a longer period, yes? And to be honest, from where we come from, if one can just indicate on the years where this deployment has happened, we have never had failures. Hence, for now, we're still satisfied that their intervention will yield results. And I don't want us to take the approach that maybe it's because we are masking failures in the police. It's not about masking anything, but it's about putting an decisive intervention that would yield immediate results, because we know that there's inadequate human resource like of SAPS that can deal with whatever that is happening on the ground of illegal immigrants, extortionists, gangsterism, and so on. So it's about just to act on the force that is there and the boots on the ground to actually say that let's fast track the work that we've been doing as this sector. On the matter of what has been asked actually by a veteran, Mr. Mutapo, I want to just say that at least we are here. Last week, I think we engaged with the Department of Military Veteran around the beneficiaries of meal vets, that how far are we in terms of their issues, housing, medical assistance, their beneficiaries' benefits as well, and others that have been left out in terms of the database. We have been given the report that they're still consolidating on a daily basis, working with different provinces to ensure that they consolidate all those that were not registered and having the first number. However, one would want to just say to you, veteran, behind you, there's a person who is the secretary of the committee. You can just give him your details so that we can follow through as the select committee on issues that you have just raised. Give me just 7 days, then we would respond to you, or the department will request the department to directly respond to you with regards to your exclusion. However, lastly, as I conclude on my response, is that we believe as the select committee that there is nothing that can deal with these three inequalities if our country we don't have peace. And peace is the only way to actually deal with these triple challenges. And I think those who are following through as the select committee, we are the select committee that advocates for body-worn cameras for all those who are dealing with law enforcement issues. Because we have realized that those who are supposed to be protecting, they are conflicted, they are part of these criminal activities. So if we will be having that body-worn cameras, in all our spaces where people need to be ethical, that would actually assist us to deal with the criminal elements in criminal police systems, and where we think that through what we have seen on Madlanga and ad hoc can be dealt with. So body-worn cameras is for the future use and the current, and responding to issues that we are seeing that they are of bad immorality and unethical ethics in the working space. I thank you.
Thank you, Mr. The chair of the session, and thank you, media, for the questions you posed to us. Let me start with the question from the first, how deployment will differ from the previous deployments. Members, as you know, we, as members of parliament, we are mandated in terms of section 198 subsection D, in terms of dealing with the Department of Defense. We want things to be done in terms of the law. We want them to do things and to ensure that they achieve, they have success in their missions. We cannot keep on having them being deployed, but with no results. So we expect these deployments to be different from the previous deployments. We can't be doing the same. And I think you have attended many of our meetings. We have seen the committee members how they make emphasis on this deployment. And I've seen some of you in our committee, where you covered. Our members of parliament want the SNDF and the SEPs to assist our society and deal with crime. And that is what we are looking for as members of parliament. And we are not turning back. We need results. The question on, okay, I just answered the issue of the joint ops. Yes, I think we also emphasized on them to explain how they are going to work together. And we demanded that they must come and present to members of parliament about their joint operation, and that meeting is next week, and they will come and give us their clear plan on how they are going to do. They are going to work together to ensure that they eradicate crime within our society. This is a crisis, and we want to deal with this crisis as members of parliament. And we need to work together with them, and we'll do our part. We want them to do their part. With the issue of reliance, media, I think you all know that this is a short-term deployment of the police. I mean, of the SEPs. We want as the SANDF to assist the police for a particular period of time and deal with crime, and it cannot be for a long time, and we cannot say they must rely on the SANDF. They've got to work together. This is a security cluster. They've got to work together and ensure that the crime is eradicated within our communities. With regard to the mission, a specific deployment code of conduct, those are the things which we expect them to do. We expect them to work within the law and to ensure that they come with the code of conduct of how both SEPs and SANDF will do their responsibilities or undertake their responsibilities. And if there's any mishap, then the law must just kickstart. We cannot have members who are on operational, particularly when they are within a civilian environment. And as you know, the SANDF within that, we raised them the issue of civilians. I mean, of SANDF operating within the civilian environment. Therefore, there are rules and regulations which they must adhere to them strictly without any. The issue of the veteran. The veteran, you are quite right. As I think as a society, we have neglected our veterans for quite some time. But I think the chair here has explained that she will give you an answer with regard to your benefits. But with regard to you playing part and making use of you, I think we have been weak as a society in that regard to make use of people who were there before, people who understand the security environment. We have been very poor in that. And tomorrow we have a Reserve Force Council. I think those are some of the things which will be explained and dealt with. And we really value the work which you have done before, and that work must continue. And as you are here, you are available, and I do not see the reason why you cannot utilize such skills. I think my colleague here has answered you with regard to the structural misalignment. Those are some of the problems we are dealing with. Those are the legacy of apartheid. This is not easy, but we have to deal with them. This is very important. The question we ask is very important. Last year when we were at Portsmouth, young people, the communities who are in Portsmouth, who are incarcerated in Portsmouth, these are young people. And this is as a result of this structural misalignment. And I think let's deal with it as a society. Let's protect our children, and let's make sure that we have a society which does not neglect its children, but empower these children to become leaders of tomorrow. Okay, the issue of illegal firearms, I think my colleagues will deal with it. Yeah, I think I just touched upon all these matters which have been raised. But the last thing which I will say here, Chair, is that yeah, we have a meeting. We have a meeting tomorrow with Reserve Force Council, and next week we'll be having a meeting a joint meeting with the SEPs and the SNDF, and that is, I think, all our will be there together to see the plan which the SNDF and the SEP are going to put it together. Thank you, Chair.
There's a slight change here. My friend from the police will be the sweeper. Yeah, look, on the code of conduct, I so wish that as South Africans, we must be victim-centric. We have pushed for too long a system of skewed human rights culture, which talks too much of the rights of a perpetrator than the rights of a victim. I'll make you an example. The veteran who spoke earlier on is a victim, a law-abiding citizen who has served our National Defense Force, but is not getting his benefits. We have a convicted criminal that the correctional services spends between 500 and 700 daily on a convicted criminal who's a perpetrator and a menace to society. But even the person who that a convicted criminal would have offended or would have killed never got any decent send-off from us as a people. Now, we need to understand, when we talk code of conduct, I know there was a mistake of the National Defense Force in some deployment during COVID, but that cannot be used to say that the system must not be responsive whenever there's a crisis of 26,000 people killed. We agree that there needs to be a code of conduct so that the Defense Force does not act beyond what is said in Chapter 9 and Chapter 10 institutions. Now, that is the work of us as parliamentarians to ensure that we play oversight over the Defense Force and the executive, not to go overstretching their mandate when it comes to this particular point. The second thing is the approach of multidiscipline as part of long-term solution to dealing with the criminal element and the crisis of crime in our country. That's why we are saying, except SANDF and the South African Police Services, you need National Prosecuting Authority. We need special courts when we have such projects, so that whoever gets arrested immediately is taken to court, the court takes a decision. Whoever who's minor or underage, who is part of the gang economy or recruitment, we find proper social support for them so that we give them counseling. So we need the Department of Social Development. Whoever whom we find and arrest as an undocumented illegal, there's a Geneva Convention of 1951. It's an international law of the United Nations. There's an Africa Protocol on Immigration of 1967. Those are laws that needs to be respected. We can't be cajoled and muzzled to run a charity when we are a charity case ourselves, where 32 million people sleep every day without food. So it cannot be the case that we are pushed to agree even to wrong things, illegal things, in the name of wanting to be loved. It does not work like that. We need to take care of the little resources we have so that we take care of our citizens and the future of our children. So it must be understood. But I would want to pursue South Africans to become at least victim-centric. 26,000 people dies every year in the hands of the criminal element. What about their lives? Because they too are covered by the same constitution that covers the convicted criminal or the perpetrator, that you have a right to life. But yet their lives are taken, and nobody speaks on their behalf. So when we deal with the code of conduct against a perpetrator who has a high caliber weapon, unlicensed, shooting in a heist, if the police and the defense force comes in, what must they do? Police comes in with a pistol, the criminal is an automatic rifle. You can't challenge an automatic rifle with a pistol. You need something more forceful than a pistol. So we can't talk about the code of conduct when it was known that that criminal had a high caliber weapon. So for a high caliber weapon, you need a response equal to the high caliber weapon. So when we talk code of conduct, it must also apply to the perpetrators, so that we are not muzzled by skewed human rights culture. Because these people are perpetrators, they are a menace to society, they are attacking society, they are killing society. You are responsible as the chairperson of the Portfolio Committee of Defense, who has taken an oath to uphold, protect the Republic and its people. So I can't instruct anyone in the force, whether police or defense force, to say when they attack you with high caliber weapons, you can still say to them, you have a right to silence, you have a right to an acting. When this person is shooting with an AK-47 or an R5 in the scene. So we need to understand that the defense force is trained for combat. Yes, it can only use combat when there's combat to defend the nation. So it must not be said that they must just be hamstrung when criminals are running amok. The second point that we need is to check up our intelligence services. That's why we talk of the Fusion Center. Fusion Center, artificial intelligence, get communities to report to robots in an artificial intelligence center, get to the crime intelligence and defense intelligence to tag and label every kingpin so that we know who to follow, who to report, and allow communities also to participate in the intelligence services. Because once we can create an artificial center, people will report to you, including who sells driver's licenses, who sells citizenship, who does what, who sells drugs and illicit mining, a station commander who collaborates with them. They will report him to a robot and the elite is there, and that person gets followed and arrested, just like that. And some of them bring SARS so that you kill the economy of illicit life they live or illicit trade they do. Because that illicit trade makes us to lose income in the South African revenue services and end up wanting to increase tax, whilst we have tax uncollected to the value of over 80 billion, which is in these illicit trades and business, which can bring revenue to the states so that all these services that we want can be properly paid for. Now we need to cut the economy, we need to cut the network, and that is done by intelligence when we deal with organized crime. But the problem is what has been going through in the commissions of inquiry clearly demonstrate that we have to change our ball game and approach to how we deal with some of these things, because some of our senior officials are deeply involved. And the sooner some of them get arrested, the better for the nation. We can't be apologists because they are ruining life, they are destroying future of children, and they cannot be taken for the oath they took to be generals or senior officers or police officers. So that's basically the point that we want to emphasize from the side of the National Defense Force. We are the last line of defense of the country. We're not going to be apologetic. We're going to push back.
We had the artillery, then we had infantry, and now we had the mechanized infantry. Thank you, Chairs. I'm going to try and go through in chronological order. I have, although in between, made notes just to add. The first thing is it different from other deployments? I think it still has the opportunity to be different. Unfortunately, what we saw in Eldorado Park, some of what happened there is not legal, full stop. A soldier cannot walk into a house or an apartment and start searching it without a police member present and without the police member leading the execution of a warrant or that specific operation. It is illegal, and it is not right to expect us to see decent conviction and prosecution happening if that happens. Any defense lawyer that's worth anything will be able to get a perpetrator off the hook if those processes are not followed properly. So I want to say it here publicly today that those defense lawyers also listen, because hopefully they will assist us in holding the relevant people accountable. I agree that we need to push back very, very hard against these criminals, but we need to do it the right way. We need to set a certain standard and a certain example. So I think the deployment still has the opportunity. There is still a lot that needs to happen. I've heard and I've seen that there is preparation for proper joint training and intervention, and I think that it can be positive. So that's the first part. Then in the next one, Thielen, your first question, happy with the explanation. We're not happy yet. That's why I think it's fantastic that the chair of the Joint Standing Committee has arranged the joint meeting. I think it's an opportunity to make sure that everyone is around the table. I will touch on that again just now. Then in terms of other stakeholders and what the general issues are, I agree that social development needs to be there, but there are 2 or 3 other critical stakeholders that need to be there. The first one is the MPA. I completely agree with my colleague regarding courts that need to be prepped properly. There's no use, it's like with Chanela. We suddenly arrest 10,000 suspects in X amount of time, and we flood the court. And the police tries to fill the court roll, and the MPA tries to empty the court roll. It's counterproductive. We need to have a synchronized approach, an integrated type of approach. Then the revenue service. SARS is missing in action on this. I'm not blaming them directly. I'm just saying they are a critical stakeholder that needs to be part of this if we want to remove kingpins from circulation. Correctional services. What role are they playing in these operations? Are they going to be checking, for example, parole conditions of people that were previously in correctional facilities? Obviously, social development is critical. As I missed your name at the back, apologies for that. But with regards to your comments on the children, I'm no expert on that, but I can tell you now that, let's use the Atlanta shooting of that young girl. It highlights how exposed children are and that there is a significant gap. So I agree with you. The third question, do we accept the challenge regarding the investigation of the Telkom towers? Absolutely. There is work already being done by the Portfolio Committee on Public Works. So obviously there's already I think it could be an opportunity for a joint initiative, but it is something that we would need to zoom in on. Our challenge, and I'm saying this really as a challenge, not as an excuse, is that if we walk across the road and we go and look at the status of the officers of some of the police units that are just across from Parliament, the state of those buildings are absolutely horrific. So it wouldn't only be the Telkom towers, but some of the other major offices too. SANDF deployment masking critical issues. I don't think it's necessarily deliberately masking issues, but the deployment does have the risk of unintentionally masking issues that need urgent resolve. We can't expect something different by continually doing the same thing. If we don't remove corruption from certain leadership positions or leaders from certain positions where corruption has happened, how do you expect it to change? Let me give you an example. The head of supply chain management in the police, Lieutenant General Fani, he was investigated by the SIU. He was previously fingered in a corruption matter with PPE during the COVID-19 period. Despite that, while working for Treasury, he was still appointed as the head of supply chain in SAPS. We raised this in the police committee with the Auditor General and now in the ad hoc committee. Guess what? He's still the head of supply chain in the police. So my point is that we can do all the tactics on the ground and change them as much as we want. If you don't cut off the head of the corruption, there's no use in playing around with tactical changes on ground level. So then, just in terms of the technology comment, I agree with my colleague. In fact, I agree 100% with both of my colleagues regarding the use of technology. Just an additional comment, what we found that with body cams, for example, if you've got a cop that's already corrupt, he'll find a way of working around a body cam. So the integrity testing issue, in my opinion, is the foundation of this. And if we start there, it will already assist in addressing actual combating of crime. In terms of the questions on illicit firearms, a lot of the illicit firearms that are seized are not from private lawfully armed citizens. A large amount of them come from state coffers. And this isn't research that I'm sucking out my thumb. The Civilian Secretariat on Police a few years ago released research that was done by the Wits School of Governance that indicated that no matter the changes of the Central Firearms Register regulations or Firearms Control Act amendments, it doesn't resolve the issue of large amounts of firearms that get lost or stolen from state coffers. So if you go read research by the Global Initiative Against Transnational Organized Crime, it indicates to us that in the SADC region, there are more than 3.2 million illicit firearms in circulation. 3.2 million. Those don't come from lawfully armed citizens. These are big syndicated operations. And if you speak to some of the cops on ground level lately in the Cape Flats, very often some of the firearms that they seize are brand new. They were never in the hands of a private citizen, and they have brand new ammunition. So how did those things get smuggled to them the way they did? So I'm just saying the approach shouldn't be to always punish the good people. We need to zoom in on the actual illicit supply. I won't say in closing again. I'm scared I closed too many times. Just in terms of corruption, not corruption, sorry, technology. If we aren't able to fix a police van, there's no use in having an IT system upgraded. If we can't do the basics right, there's no use. Not too long ago, I did an unannounced visit to Public Order Police here at Fora Base in Cape Town. They were at 30% strength, their vehicles. And after the committee intervened, we managed to get them back up to 75%. But why do we need to intervene when it's such a basic thing that they need? I mean, it's logic, right? So we need to make sure that the basics are done properly. Then on question 4, Sean, your question regarding the amendments to the SAPS Act and as well as the CIRO Act, the appetite is certainly there. The CIRO one, I don't know exactly when that's coming, but I know that the SAPS Act, there was actually already talk of it being starting processing this year. I hope so. Unfortunately, we had to do the ad hoc committee process, and we've got the gang inquiry coming up. But Parliament has been really accommodating in allowing the portfolio committee to actually have half a day extra, possibly a day extra, to process some of our work. So we've got a lot of hard work ahead of us, but the appetite is certainly there, and we've done good. We've had good engagements with the Secretariat, especially on the amendment, the SAPS amendment bill, to see what we can do in preparation to that. So that was, in my opinion, positive. Question 6, legal and illegal firearms regarding outdated systems. I touched on the Wits School of Governance report. I think that's critical. Just in terms of the outdated systems, again, comes back to corruption. We have an incredible amount of money that was spent on upgrading the relevant systems on the inside of SAPS, specifically the Central Firearms Register, and it was never completed. It is not functional the way that it should be. And since we've gone over to a manual firearm control process, when members book out firearms or ammunition, they work with paper and pen to indicate how many rounds of ammunition, firearm, etc. they booked out. Just because of the dispute between General Setole back then, Minister Bekitele, and FDA, who was meant to give, or was the service provider of that system. They switched off due to non-payment. You'll know the whole fight in court about that at the moment. So it basically means we've opened the door for further corruption because of this pen and paper process. I recently, it's just over a year ago, I did an unannounced visit to the Kleinvlei police station, and I found like heaps of paper indicating which member uses what firearm, who takes firearms home, just lying outside on the floor in a torn rubbish bag. So basic things that could be digitized very, very simply. So we need to, obviously, and we will continue to zoom in on that. The last 2 things, not in closing, we need to make sure that in terms of the private security private security regulators, as the colleagues suggested, I think there's a specific part that we need to zoom in on there, and that is the zoom in on rogue security firms that are used by the taxi industry, which in my opinion in some areas have unfortunately become mafia-like. They use rogue security firms to be their enforcers, and those very enforcers often do the work of extortion groups as well, and they are the enforcers for extortion groups. We found this during our oversight visits to the Eastern Cape and to KZN. So I think there's a very specific and almost a low-hanging fruit for the private security regulator to attend to. In closing, I'm joking, I'm finished.
Hey, thank you very much, Honorable Chair. I'm going to give you, if you're a soccer player, I was going to add the nickname of Closure. And Closure Cameron. But thank you very much, Honorable Chair Cameron. Thank you, Honorable Chair Lukhete. Thank you, Honorable Chair Phala. Thank you, Honorable Chair Maneniso, for your comprehensive insights and comprehensive accountability or accounting to the public. A lot of issues from all these committees, very important. They really go to the heart of our daily lives and whether we thrive as a society, as a nation, or not. So that's why we took quite some time to deal with these issues. We're supposed to take only 1.5 hours so that we can release you to go to the houses, but I think we did very well. And I thank you to the members of the media, colleagues, always being here and transmitting, disseminating the news here to the public to support the work of Parliament and bridging the gap between Parliament and the people. Stakeholders, without you, we cannot fully pride ourselves of executing the mandate under the Constitution. So very important, fair representation of the sections of our society. We thank you for the engagement and raising the issues that you are within the purview of your organizations and the companies, etc., etc. So thank you very much, really, for this wonderful engagement. The houses are sitting now, about to sit at 2 o'clock. I know the National Council of Provinces is dealing with important issues of questions to the social services cluster ministers, as well as the sports and culture minister. In the National Assembly, questions to the Deputy President. So those are very important issues of accountability. So we thank you very much. Let's close this press briefing. Thank you very much.
Announcement.